So we'll start off, nous allons commencer avec le procès-verbal de la...
We shall start with the minutes of the previous meeting. Do you have any questions, comments? The first point, the minutes of the previous meeting. Are you okay with everything? Good.
From previous minutes, is anybody have any comments? Est-ce que quelqu'un a des commentaires là-dessus?
Any comments, questions, Madame de Bellefeuille? Mr. Chair, I have a few questions concerning the minutes of the 7th of December 2022. As you are aware, for a while now, we've been trying to determine the capacity that interpreters have to support Parliament, either in the House of Commons or in committees. And on page 1 of the minutes, the Board of Internal Economy had to ask the Translation Bureau to collaborate with the House administration to find out the daily capacity for interpretation services. Could you tell us whether daily meetings between the Translation Bureau and the House of Commons administration are taking place? Is the House administration properly informed about the daily capacity of interpretation? I could ask Mr. MacDonald to answer that question. I think he's ready. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yes, Madame de Bellefeuille, we are holding those daily meetings to find out the capacity for the days. We recently started discussions to plan the use of resources that will be available for the fall, but we don't have any further information on that. Mr. Chair, what I understand, I'm sorry. Let me add something, and you could provide details later. The Translation Bureau recruited a senior person to act as a liaison officer between the Translation Bureau and the House administration to look into the capacity issues. I understand that this person even has an office here on Parliament Hill. I don't know if the person has already moved into that office. Could you confirm? I think there's a liaison officer now that is acting as a liaison between the Translation Bureau and the House administration. Yes, the person is here already. We found an office at Wellington office near the interpreters and near the committee rooms, so the person can know exactly what's happening, and if there are any issues, the person can support us. Perfect. Mr. Chair, so if there are discussions every day to be able to support each other and to be properly informed of available resources, Mr. Chair, were you informed of what is currently circulating in the media, that the new contract being negotiated for freelancers may not encourage freelancers to continue providing services to Parliament, because they are talking about increasing their hours of work during hybrid meetings from 4 hours to 6 hours. The contract has not yet been signed. It's still being negotiated. I'm not doing labor relations work here. But I would like to find out if the House administration and the Translation Bureau are aware of the risks that could occur in September with a possible reduction in interpretation capacity. Let me allow Mr. Patrice or Mr. McConnell to answer. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may start. We have not had any discussions about that yet with our colleagues of the Translation Bureau. We were informed. We saw the same articles in the press, but we have no further information. Mr. Chair, this liaison officer who works with the Translation Bureau and the House administration has not had any discussion with the House administration about September. if that's what you said. Mr. Chair, this whole issue of capacity, and maybe my colleagues from the government may think that I'm focusing a lot on the word interpretation capacity, but maybe it's from my experience as a manager. I am not yet satisfied with the answers I've received from the Translation Bureau when it comes to their manpower planning, staff planning for the upcoming years, particularly when it comes to the fall, because from what we're hearing, freelancer interpreters will not be happy to sign the new contract because interpreters will be more at risk. I know I'm a Francophone member of parliament, and I want to make sure that in September we have enough interpreters to interpret me, to interpret all my Anglophone and Francophone colleagues. Would my colleagues agree that, considering the importance of this information, we can invite the Translation Bureau to a next meeting of the board to really address this issue? Let's give the Bureau time to prepare and properly inform us, because as you are aware, discussions are underway when it comes to the future of the hybrid parliament in September. Now, we need information from the Translation Bureau to reassure us so that we properly prepare for September. Do my colleagues agree that we should invite the Translation Bureau? Is everyone in agreement with that? Mr. Julian, you want to add something? Maybe we wait for you to finish and then we'll ask if it's okay with you that we ask for the Translation Bureau to come. I would like you to ask that question after my comments. Go ahead. I don't know if Madame de Bellefeuille is done. No, I've not. I'm sorry. I'm almost done, Mr. Julian. We'll wait for decision and then we'll go to Mr. Julian and then we'll come back for a vote or a consensus. I have a small question for Mr. MacDonald, Mr. Chair, if you'll allow me. I have spoken with you very often about the important roles that clerks play in parliamentary committees. Very often, we've said that clerks are not informers but advisors to chairs of committees. They should advise the chairs on the spirit of a motion that guides us, but also play a decisive leadership role to educate witnesses that appear before our committees, encourage them to come in person to, as much as possible, reduce the use of virtual testimonies. I remember you saying that you are going to think about it and you would present very concrete measures so that clerks could show proof of leadership and be sensitive to the cause of interpreters. Could you tell the board what measures you've taken to promote the attendance of witnesses? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I think we could point out 2 or 3 important things. We took time to make a presentation to all committee chairs to encourage them, or first of all, to inform them of the current situation and to encourage them to explain the situation as well and to encourage witnesses to appear in person. We adjusted our communications that are sent out to the witnesses, indicating that it's very normal and preferable to have witnesses appear in person, knowing that it's still an option for witnesses. Of course, there are cases and situations where it makes more sense to have witnesses. As we said in the past, and as you are aware, for witnesses who are in Ottawa or in the National Capital Region, it makes sense for them to come to Parliament Hill, and that's something we encourage as much as possible. Mr. Chair, from what I understand from Mr. MacDonald is that a directive was given to the clerks to encourage and motivate in-person testimonies. I think that is the key message that was communicated to all clerks, as well as the messages that the clerks are sharing when they are communicating with witnesses on behalf of the committee. Good. One last question, Mr. Chair, if you would allow me, and if my colleagues are still bearing with me. You know, you completed the dashboard for virtual parliament. I would like to thank all those who are contributing to the preparation of this document. When we prepare a dashboard, we are able to make assessments and to evaluate progress. I see that in March 2023, 64% of minutes, I will not say persons, of minutes were done in person, and 36% was virtual. Is that a proper reading of the dashboard? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes. Graph number 5 concerns witnesses, and it shows that 64% of witnesses appeared in person and 36% of witnesses appeared virtually. Graph number 6 has just been added for the first time, and this shows that 75% of minutes were spoken in committee in person, and 25% of minutes spoken in committee were from people appearing virtually. So, Mr. Chair, there's a general improvement of the situation. If you look at what happened from the beginning and now, you see that there's a good trend towards a return to in-person meetings. But Mr. MacDonald, Mr. Chair, could you tell me, when you get to 75-25 in terms of minutes, it's possible that during a meeting, I'm taking an example, if there's filibustering for 2 hours in a parliamentary committee and this person is online, this is 2 hours of interpretation, virtual interpretation. So the idea is that we are trying to understand when we see the demand for interpreters, which is going to increase from 4 to 6 hours, and now we still don't have any consensus on the ISO standards. So for you, it's impossible to tell the Translation Bureau or to the committees or to government operations, today it's going to be 100% in-person meetings or 25% virtual, 75% in person. So the planning of interpreter time on a daily basis is going to be difficult for the Translation Bureau because they are not aware in advance how much time will be required for virtual participation. Do you understand me? Because I think it's difficult to plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I think what you're saying is okay. It's true. It's impossible to predict who is going to speak in person, virtually. We have an idea in advance based on the information that we've had with witnesses, what their intentions will be. But once again, it all depends. If someone is in British Columbia, we know that they would prefer to appear virtually, and it only makes sense for the committee. There are 2 things I would like to add. You are right. It's impossible to plan, and we will see what will be the outcome of discussions between the Translation Bureau and its employees, as well as with the freelancers. There are 2 things I would like to add. One, the scientific tests. I think Stefan may add more information about that because we are still undertaking those tests in the weeks ahead. Stefan? Yes, Mr. Chair. You know that we wanted to carry out tests to validate the compliance with ISO standards. Tests were done over the past few weeks and we'll be obtaining the results in the next few weeks. It will take some time to validate the results. There are also recordings of several meetings. Some 40 or so meetings have been recorded to validate the frequency rates because interpreters were worried because they thought that the frequency being provided by virtual systems was not enough. So we want to assess that, and we'll be doing more tests to make sure that the systems we have protect interpreters against acoustic shocks, as we had in the Senate. So we will be recruiting people able to do those tests in the coming weeks. So in the next few weeks, we'll be obtaining results that we can provide. There's something we did recently, Mr. Chair, Madame de Belfay. We started discussions with Western University in Ontario. They have a specialized audiology center, a specialist audiology center. They also have specialists in electronic transformation, because some people think that electronic transformation could have an impact. So we have started discussions with Western University, in addition to what they have been doing already with the Translation Bureau. We have the University of Ottawa will be working with us as well. We'll try to see if our systems are causing a problem for the health of interpreters. So we are very involved in those tests. All of these people will be working around the same table, and they may be providing us with recommendations to provide the health and to improve the health and safety of our workers. And Madame de Belfay, this is also a concern for us. The health and security of our workers is a concern, and we are constantly trying to improve our services before our meetings. We are still doing tests. We are continuing to do tests to make sure that people have the right equipment and to make sure that there's good connectivity. We do tests before the meetings. Recently, we also added something. We are telling people the types of headsets people are using so that they know whether they can interpret or not. So we are continuing to ensure the health and safety of our interpreters. Anything else to add? Yes, if you would allow. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to add two things. For the testing, it's important to say that we do dual verification. Technicians do a test at the beginning to make sure that the right headsets are being used and that the audio quality meets the needs, and interpreters are also asked to do a second audio test to ensure quality. So it's a dual process which did not exist before, but which was implemented following the decision of the chair on the 7th of March and the changes that were made following the directive from the labor program at the Translation Bureau. I would also like to add that the 75 and 25% proportion for minutes spoken in physical meetings and virtually goes back to the pre-pandemic situation. As you are aware, we always had virtual witnesses who were using the video conferencing system. And according to analysis that we did recently, I think since November, the statistics have been stable, and we are coming back to the situation pre-pandemic. And we find this encouraging. It's important, Madame de Belfay, because we're doing a lot of work to ensure the safety and security of our workers. And there's something we did recently. At the end of meetings, we have a small caucus between participants and interveners to want to make sure that there's feedback. We try to document statistics of incidents and the causes, and we also try to meet with interpreters at the end of the meeting to find out how the meeting went and if there are things to improve. And these are things that we've put in place and that we continue to improve, and we hope will improve the situation. And from the statistics, you see that the situation is improving. And the clerks are also participating in that process. To conclude, Mr. Chair, I would like to shed some light on the 75-25. When you compare the situation with the pre-pandemic situation, before the pandemic, all MPs were in person. MPs were not participating via video conference, only witnesses, and that's something that's very important because we need to compare apples with apples. The indicator you've mentioned, I do understand it. Things are moving forward, but it's not a fair comparison because we do not control MPs who are testifying virtually, the number per committee and the number of minutes. And that is why it's difficult to be able to get to a right balance to ensure that our interpreters can interpret as they did before, with some exceptions appearing via video conference. So there are things that we can no longer control now because MPs can now testify, can now appear virtually. That is a situation that did not exist before. I am encouraged because now I am seeing that the administration is working hard to gain more knowledge, to provide more resources to support interpreters because you know that we need them. You need to improve the sound and improve equipment. So the chair has also imposed obligatory headsets, and MPs who are not wearing those headsets do not have the right to speak. I was joking with my colleague the other day, and I was saying a man in the House of Commons cannot speak in the House of Commons if they are not wearing their shirt or their tie. So that's just part of the rules. So in addition to the shirt and the tie, if you are not in Parliament and you are attending, you must wear the headset. Is it the right headset? Are we going to be changing headsets again? So all this requires consultation, and maybe the scientific research will help us come up with new devices to support our interpreters. Mr. Chair, this is a very important file. We are not done discussing it in the board. I am impatiently looking forward to the presence of the Translation Bureau so that we can continue looking into the capacity issue come September. Thank you very much, Madame de Bellefeuille. Mr. Julian. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First of all, let me thank everyone for the dashboard. It's true that this shows that there's been an improvement when it comes to the work of the committee, in committees. That's very important. Everyone here takes the health and safety of our interpreters seriously. So there is an improvement. Mr. Obe, thank you for the analysis that is being done. If it's available in the next 2 weeks, it will be important. Where I'm concerned is the working conditions and the idea that for freelancers, their working hours will be increased. In my opinion, this is concerning. If there are improvements technically, but the working conditions are worsening, I wonder if we are making any progress. Without interpreters, there's no parliament. It's as clear as that. The Parliament and the House of Commons is really the venue where French-speaking Canadians and English-speaking Canadians can meet and communicate. Interpreters are absolutely necessary. Considering all these elements, just like Madame de Bellefeuille, I would like us to invite the Translation Bureau. We are talking about 2-3 weeks, if I understand, for the results of the analysis that will be done by Western University. Considering that my wife is an audiologist, I understand the importance of that analysis, but I do not think that we should wait for that study unless we know for sure that it's going to be available in 2 weeks. But if not, in the next week or two at the max, we should ask the Translation Bureau to come here to talk about those working conditions, because it's very important. We can't neglect it. I think everyone here wants a parliament that works. There are several advantages to a hybrid parliament, but if we've not done everything to ensure the proper health and safety of interpreters and also to improve their working conditions at work, including the technologies involved, then this is not a good idea. So if we can do that as quickly as possible, I think we could ask questions and receive answers that will be very important. And lastly, Mr. Chair, the fact that you've imposed the use of headsets, mandatory use of headsets, I think that's having a positive impact. It's certain that when people do not have those headsets, well, they're beginning to understand that if they don't have their headsets, they won't participate. So that's also very important. And it's helping us make improvements when it comes to the health and safety of interpreters. Any comments? I was asking for a date. The next date of our board meeting is the 18th of May. Is that too far out? What we can do is find out if we can choose another date. I am not making any promises, but we'll see if we can find a date before that. Then we could try to organize a meeting. Thank you very much. Something else. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Obe. I just want us to separate the discussion of work relations from expert reports, because we do not control that. They have to do necessary analysis. In the way we work, we have committed to share analysis once they're ready with interpreters and with everyone. So I just wanted us to separate the two issues. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to add something else, because there was a discussion about capacity. There's something to add. For people from the WIP's office, we have a simulation tomorrow on the virtual interpretation system that we would like to introduce, and it's going to be a pilot project. We are working in close collaboration with our colleagues of the Translation Bureau. And these are accredited interpreters accredited by the Translation Bureau, who will be helping us with this project. It's something we'll be doing. It's going to be a simulation, and we're trying to see how we can introduce it for some events in the coming weeks, events that are not televised, less formal, and there it will be possible to start with this new solution and to see if we obtain good results. And the idea is that it could be used as well for committee meetings eventually. So we'll look at what Mr. de Bellefeuille and Mr. Julian are proposing, invite the Translation Bureau to the next Board of Internal Economy meeting as soon as possible. Did I combine your proposals well? A question, Mr. McConnell? What is the reason for the invitation? Can we be clear what we are asking the Translation Bureau to do? I think it was about information. I think it's better if Madame de Bellefeuille explain what she wants. I think that the new CEO could give us more information. I have lots of questions about predictions, staff planning, how many interpreters are going on retirement, how many new interpreters will be joining. And Mr. Chair, with the new contract being negotiated, even if we don't want to get into labor relations, we need to put questions to the Translation Bureau. If ever the contract being proposed to freelancers is not satisfactory to freelancers because they're afraid for their health and safety and they do not want to work for Parliament as freelancers. What scenario, what impact will this have on the capacity of interpreters to do their work to support us come September? This is my concern. I think that as a good manager, the CEO has great management experience. I imagine that he has a plan B. If ever he went ahead with this contract, what is his game plan to retain freelancers or not? Because this is decisive, Mr. Chair. To continue our hybrid work, we should always know the interpretation capacity. And I somewhat share Mr. Julian's urgency. I don't want the CEO to come and not have any information because we've heard him before. I would like him to prepare. I would like him to present his staff plan and should reassure us or identify the challenges, the obstacles, what is to expect so that together we can all take the right decisions for the session starting in September. Mr. McKinnon, I've heard two things. Specific questions concerning staff planning, estimates, and so on. These are things we could get through you in writing from the CEO of the Translation Bureau. And I heard Madame de Belfier say she did not want to interfere in labor relations and at the same time ask a question that is interfering in the labor relations domain. So I want to be clear. When we are talking about the objective of this meeting, I myself do not want to interfere with labor relations. I think it's better for us to leave this up to people to whom this task has been assigned. But when it comes to estimates and figures and so on and so forth, I think we could do that in writing before the next meeting. Mr. Gillian? I think there are many questions being raised and decisions that are required when it comes to the hybrid parliament. This is not information we can only have on paper. There are questions that must be asked. In the past, we received some details from the Translation Bureau. What the plan was in terms of new interpreters, all these questions are important. So I think it's important for it to be during a Board of Internal Economy meeting. I have questions. I know Madame de Belfeuille will also have questions. If there's just two of us who have questions during that meeting, the meeting will not be too long, but we need to have that meeting. And in my opinion, we cannot wait for the 19th of May. There's a lot of things we need to deal with and lots of questions that require an answer by mid-May. Good. Let me make sure I understand you well. You want to know the new director to ask questions and find out what his plan is. Because in the past, we did not receive questions. We did not receive answers to our questions. Is that clear? You understand why we're doing this? No? Do we agree? We will do what we can to invite him here as soon as possible. I do not find the meeting necessary at this point. I haven't heard anything convincing to that effect that requires that we convene the CEO of the Translation Bureau. Madame de Belfeuille, I know that this is a heavy subject and my colleagues are tired of talking about it, but it's very important. I find that whenever the Translation Bureau appears, I was always dissatisfied, but because they could not provide data. I don't have the same reading as Mr. McKinnon. We are in a public session, Mr. Chair. We are discussing a very important topic, and I do not understand why my colleague is not providing his approval that we invite the CEO of the Translation Bureau during our next meeting. I ponder. I do not understand. But since it's a tradition here for us not to vote, but to go by consensus, I'm asking him to reconsider his decision and to allow us to receive the CEO of the Translation Bureau, Mr. Gillian. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the same vein, I do not see why we should say no to information that is crucial. And furthermore, we have motions that will change things at the end of June. In my opinion, the hybrid parliament was a great success at various levels, technological levels and so on. And people in other countries are saying that we were able to successfully implement something well. So we are a global leader. But the problem has always been the health and safety of interpreters. So we had to make lots of adjustments. We are not yet there. We need to continue working. So the matter of interpreters will be very important in the upcoming weeks. And that is why, as the Board of Internal Economy, I think it's crucial for us to have that meeting. Even if it lasts only 1 hour, we need answers. This would help all the parties to understand the stakes and the importance of improving the situation of interpreters so that we can take the decisions we need to take. We can continue talking about it, but I have a lot of respect for my colleague. I hope he will say yes, even if it's a lukewarm yes, for us to have that meeting and obtain those answers. Do we have consensus to invite? No? I see no consensus. Do we move on to number 3, or do we continue the discussion? Madame de Bellefeuille, I am totally frustrated. There are important members not around the table, but I'll come back to this issue because I find it unacceptable on the part of the government. We know that interpreter services are important, but you don't want us to listen to the CEO. You don't want him to tell us his estimates, his staff planning, what are the challenges he's expecting in September. Sincerely, we are not here for partisanship, but I think this is what we're doing. If you don't have any other comments, we shall move on to number 3.
Organization of Policies, Part 1. I'd like to invite up Mr. Saint-Georges, Monsieur Aubé, Mr. Fernandez, et Ms. Lafontaine. Monsieur Saint-Georges, je vous laisse la parole.
Mr. St. George, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm speaking to the board to obtain approval of members to update two policies applicable to MPs. The first has to do with offering MPs an iPad paid for with the central budget at the beginning of each parliament. Considering the technological advances we've made over the last few years, other types of devices are now available for MPs for the exercise of their parliamentary duties. Note that MPs are entitled to 5 computer devices at the most from the central budget. It is therefore recommended that the administration stop providing iPads to MPs at the beginning of the next parliament. Those devices could still be purchased subject to certain limitations, and the cost shall be covered by the MP's office budget.
There's budget allocation. Operating budgets for certain roles are established using a fixed amount, while the budgets for other roles are based on party representation following a general election. An additional budget envelope for wireless telecommunications services is distributed among eligible House officers based on the weighted average of their respective operating budgets. To simplify this calculation, administration is recommending that these budgets for the wireless telecommunications services be permanently included in the operating budgets of eligible House officers. This would provide a revised base amount for the party representation calculation. The financial impact of this change, it is important to note, would be immaterial. These two proposals would take effect following the next general election, and the members' bylaw would be amended accordingly. Mr. Speaker, this concludes my presentation, and welcome any questions the BOIE may have.
Any questions or comments? Is everyone on board with the recommendation? We have consensus? Okay, very good. Now we'll go to number 4, House of Commons Administration Strategic Plan. Mr. Jans, the acting clerk of the House of Commons, will make a presentation.
Great.
Mr. Jans.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm very proud and pleased to be able to, on behalf of the Clerks Management Group, and in fact, on behalf of the entire House administration, to present our Strategic Plan 2023-2026 and to seek your approval to have it tabled in the House. Ce plan est le fruit de vastes consultations.
This plan is the result of extensive consultations with members of management, their extended teams, and numerous employees who participated in consultation sessions held last year.
Is to support you, the members of Parliament, in the fulfillment of your duties. We may have other clients, for instance the public, the media, or the diplomatic corps, but our raison d'etre is to anticipate and respond to the needs and requests of members. The plan serves as a roadmap to guide the House administration's efforts to provide exceptional, integrated, and accessible services to members, enabling them to carry out their essential functions as parliamentarians. The House administration has many ideas, projects, and initiatives to better support members, but does not, obviously, have the human, financial, or IT capacity to undertake them all at the same time. As such, the strategic plan will serve as a roadmap and assist in allowing us to prioritize initiatives and to align resources to allow for the most efficient delivery of services. Notre vision d'une chambre d'une équipe.
Our vision, one house, one team, reinforces the idea that we have a common goal and reminds us that we must work as one to anticipate your needs as parliamentarians and provide you with streamlined, customized, and high-quality services. Our mission underscores our commitment to promoting dialogue where each person, irrespective of their role in the organization, may contribute to our services and innovate with the goal of supporting MPs at the service of parliamentary democracy.
Are our values: integrity, service excellence, collaboration, and inclusion. They define who we are and what matters most to us. We take particular pride in serving all parties and, in fact, all the members of each party equally, and it is at the core of what we are as a parliamentary administration. For
2023-2026, the work of the House administration will be guided by 3 key strategic priorities. We will first focus on our staff to ensure a diverse workforce and on health, so people can feel integrated and properly accompanied in their professional and career development. We will make our workplace another priority. We are committing to ensuring an adaptable workplace focused on information, connected and safe to facilitate work today and in the future. And by focusing on service delivery, we will continue to create a fluid, integrated, accessible, MP-centered experience.
Now includes 3 leadership commitments. These commitments are important for my management group and myself as they set the foundation for achieving the goals laid out in the plan and are meant to speak to leaders in the broadest sense and at all levels. More concretely, here are a few examples of how we will bring the Strategic Plan 2023-2026 to life. We will implement our accessibility plan to fulfill our obligations under the Accessible Canada Act. Work will continue to modernize and rehabilitate the centre block. We will continue to improve the quality of reporting and public disclosures and provide you with a new system to submit and manage your claims and view your budget reports, whether working from the office, from home, or on the go. We will begin using automated speech recognition technology to more quickly and efficiently produce Hansard, and we will implement a new modern HR talent management system. These are but a few of the many, many initiatives, but to conclude, we will continue to support you by assessing your needs, developing and implementing solutions, and monitoring and evaluating our services' efficiency and effectiveness. Major initiatives will always be brought to the board for approval, and we will continue to immediately react to directives from the board or other decision-making bodies such as the Liaison Committee or the Joint Interparliamentary Council. Je vous remercie pour votre temps.
Thank you for your time. I'm pleased to take your questions and comments.
Thank you, Mr. Jantz. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Shearer.
Yeah, first I just want to, I think I found the proper headset, but it just out of respect and in light of the previous discussion point, I just want to make sure that it's okay for the translators before I continue.
We got the thumbs up. You're ready to go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. I just wanted to flag something under the current strategic plan on the value section. Impartiality is a standalone point, and it is fleshed out by saying we are nonpartisan and we respect, support, and promote the democratic process. I believe that under the current proposed strategic plan, impartiality is no longer a separate value that is highlighted and pulled out, and it's now rolled into integrity. And it now reads, we serve with impartiality, honor our commitments, and remain accountable for our actions. In light of some of the concerns that this board had studied in the House at some point with respect to the previous clerk, wondering if you can speak to why the change was made to roll in impartiality into another value. Integrity is important, but I think impartiality is just as important, and why the change, and if it would be possible to revert back to having that value of impartiality pulled out, highlighted, underlined, kind of set in stone.
Mr. Jantz, please.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Mr. Scheer. Maybe to start with, obviously, impartiality is absolutely critical for everybody who works at the House of Commons, regardless of their level or their position. It could be said it's important for any public servant working in public service, but perhaps is especially so for those of us who work here at the House of Commons, because, again, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we serve all parties, we serve all members equally. So it's something that we drill into the head of each and every new employee when they start at the House to make the point. It is, again, at the core of what we are as a House and administration. Through the discussions in developing the new plan, it was determined that impartiality could go perhaps under the umbrella of integrity, so it could also encompass, as you noticed, other things that we feel important. But it certainly wasn't to diminish the importance of impartiality in any way. I hope that perhaps addresses your question.
is there a reason not to have it pulled out as a separate? I take your point, and I agree with you that it is of paramount importance. I just think including it in another value almost makes it seem like it's a subset of integrity, whereas I would argue that it is its own thing. Somebody can be a person of integrity but still not be partial if it's not and depending on the situation, depending on the dynamic. Obviously for your position or for position of the House of Commons, I would say you can't be partial and still have integrity, but I would certainly encourage you to consider pulling it back out as a standalone, especially in light of what the administration and the House has gone through over the last couple of years.
You want to respond to that, or?
No, I mean, we can certainly have a look at that and see whether we could maybe play a little bit with the language and the structure. But again, there was certainly no intent to diminish the importance of impartiality by integrating it under an umbrella value. But we can certainly go back and look at that.
Now we'll go, Mr. Scheer, you're done? Okay, now we'll go to Mr. Holland, followed by Ms. Finley. Mr. Holland.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And I take I obviously respect what my honourable colleague said and share the value, unquestionably. But I actually think it does the opposite, which is that by stating that impartiality fits under a value of integrity, you're actually strengthening the argument that impartiality is in fact a core value and represents integrity. But I'm not here to wordsmith this document. I think overall this is a very strong. I support what is presented. I support the great work of the administration, and I just I understand the point. I support the point, but maybe if you step back and you reflect on it, stating that for this place, that integrity and impartiality are one and the same, and that there is an expectation that is a core value, I think actually is more powerful to the point that Mr. Scheer was making.
Okay, now we'll go to Ms. Finley, then over to Mr. Julian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noted the same thing, and I wasn't here through a lot of the issues, but I certainly heard about them when I returned in 2019. So I think what everyone wants to be reassured of is that through this all-party board, is that impartiality remains at the heart of the House administration's DNA. It may have not been a matter that meant to be lessened or moved down, downgraded is maybe the better word, but it appears that way to me when I read it, especially as it was highlighted before and especially as it has been an issue. So I am wondering what the harm would be in making it a standalone highlighted item. And I'm also wondering if it could be articulated how much collaboration with or input from House administration employees went into the preparation of this proposal.
Mr. Jans, I believe you can answer those concerns.
Sure. Again, in terms of bringing out as a separate value impartiality, we can certainly go back to the team and discuss that. For your second question, Ms. Finley, regarding how the plan was developed and how the consultations were undertaken, I'm looking to some of my colleagues in the room, I think it took about a year to develop. There were a number of meetings of the senior management team, so the clerks management group, as it's called, to work at this based on the earlier plan and then bring in the new plan. But there were also employee consultations. We had a number of working groups. I think they were done over the summer, if memory serves me well, where employees, there was a call put out to all employees, regardless of level, whether they would like to participate in focus groups on the development of the new plan. So it did take time, but it did involve quite extensive consultations. I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you, but I would ask you to revisit this. Thanks.
Questions? No. Ms. Finley? Good. We'll go over to Mr. Julian.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I certainly understand Mr. Scheer's point, and I understand Mr. Holland's point as well, and Ms. Finley's point. I think we are basically talking about the same issue, which is impartiality a part of integrity, or is it something that coincides with integrity? And just looking at the actual values themselves, serving with impartiality, honor our commitments, and remain accountable for our actions, there are a couple of elements that are clearly in the framework of integrity, and the issue of impartiality is there as well. I would suggest one way of dealing with this would just be to add impartiality to the title. If the values include inclusion, collaboration, service excellence, they also include integrity and impartiality, which really go together, which I think strikes perhaps middle ground between what Mr. Scheer has said, which I understand and agree with, and what Mr. Holland has said, which I also understand and agree with.
Is that an acceptable compromise?
Sorry,
Mr. Scheer, please go ahead.
Just for clarification, could maybe my colleague, Mr. Julian, just kind of specify what exactly he would be, what he would like to see the wording as?
The value title would be integrity and impartiality.
I see some nodding. Is that acceptable to everyone? I think we have consensus. Fantastic. Very good. Thank you. There's no other questions or comments? Very good. Now we'll continue to item number 5. So we'll be going in camera, and we'll take 5 minutes, but if we get it sooner, we'll start sooner. So plan for 5, but si on peut le faire plus tôt, on va faire plus tôt.
We can do it sooner, so be it.